気分はどうかね。関係ない。確かに君は弱かった。時風君や道安君のようなウサギに比べれば亀だったかもしれない。だが感じないかね、今や。君以外の全人類が亀になったということ。
Hello everyone, and welcome to Outriders New Horizon. In today's video, I'm going to share with you an Anomaly powered Trickster build that has very high damage, AoE, and extreme survivability. As always, I will include a couple of different builds, so you can make the changes that fit your playstyle in case you want to sacrifice survivability or some extra DPS, that depends on you. And I'm going to add something new. Until you can unlock the legendary set that will increase our DPS by a lot, I'm going to share with you what other mods you can use quite effectively to solo challenge tier 15 expeditions without so much trouble. So without any further delay, let's have a closer look at the build. We're actually using Temporal Blade, Hunt the Prey, and Time Rift. These are the best combination of skills you can use for now for this type of build, because Cyclone Slash, I tried it, it's very bad actually. It's very slow compared to the Time Rift with a couple of mods for AoE, not as good as Temporal Blade for single target DPS, and without Hunt the Prey, the build actually becomes very slow, and it actually boosts both our Anomaly power and resistance piercing by a lot. That's why this build is very fast, everything is instant cast, and we can just teleport to enemies away, take good positioning to actually have very excellent time reach for AoE and single target DPS. So let's have a look at the armor we're using. Everything you will see in the background to take a screenshot about all the mods I'm using, but we're going to take one piece at a time to explain why we're using these mods. For the headpiece and the legs and the boots, we're going to use the Edge of Time set. It's actually the best set we can use for this type of build. It increases our temporal blade damage by 100%. It's something we desperately need to increase our single target DPS, because that's the only thing we lack against bosses. Although it increases the Cyclone Slash as well, we don't care that we lose half of this damage. All our pieces, both our legendary sets and epic pieces, have Anomaly power, skill life leads, and cooldown reduction, apart from the boots that have max health, but we need to make the sacrifice because the other pieces of the Edge of Time don't have Anomaly power and the mods we need to use. But we don't lose a lot of DPS, we actually very good to just have one max health. For the headpiece, we have the best single target increased DPS after the set bonus, which is the double slice. Now the Temporal Blade will do an additional cut that will deal 50% damage over the initial cut. It's very good, so it increases 1.5 times with the set, and this tier 3 mod, it's a must. You need it, especially for good single target DPS. And we also added Captain Hunter, further increase the damage against elites and bosses. For the chest piece, we're using two mods that I believe are also a must when we're using Time Rift. This actually carried me through Challenge Tier 15 expeditions before I farmed the legendary set. Long range, so Time Rift has the triple range. It's actually pretty insane. It can catch a lot of mobs within the range and deal a lot of damage. A little bit of pain is one of the best tier 1 mods because it scales with Anomaly power. We will look at a little later how much it scales and how good it is. For the legs, we're going to leave Strong Slice because it increases the Temporal Blade's damage, not by a lot, 100,000, but because we have the set bonus, and because we have double slice, this is actually 1.5 times higher, so it's a must. Now pain transfer is very good, very impressive mod for burst damage and to kill the mobs very good, but that being said, it's actually situational for two reasons. One, it's to kill the mobs a little faster compared to only using a little bit of pain, and in case you catch a lot of elites with it, you will deal massive burst AoE damage to the elites, the alphas and everything. However, I do believe this can be a flex slot in case you don't find it, and I will show you what you can replace it with. Moving on for the gloves, Slasher is a must. We can use Temporal Blade 2 times before it triggers a cooldown, so more Temporal Blade slashes, that's why we're using it. And Circle of Power is the other flex slot. I do like it a lot. We will get a 45% increase of resistance, and it's flex slot because against monsters you don't really need this unless you fight the crawlers, but with the crawlers you can just crowd control them, kill them very fast, slow them, Temporal Blade, paralyze them, and you don't actually need it. This is very necessary when you fight Altered or bosses like the Moloch. Without this, Moloch is very hard because you need to teleport away, heal, get sealed, and get back to Moloch. But with this you can face tank him, and you can face tank everything because we have armor capped thanks to our next mod we'll see, and with this we'll have a very good resistance, so we'll be very tanky. But in case you don't want to be very tanky, I will show you what alternative we can use. And for the last piece, we're using the boots of the Edge of Time. We're going to leave the temporal armor, which is the only other mitigation we're going to use. 50% armor boost for each enemy affected, last 8 seconds, stacks up to 8 times. So this can give 400% extra armor. It is insane. You can get armor capped, although we are now at almost 50% damage reduction. With one temporal slice you can go 70%, 80%, or even capped if you hit a lot of enemies. So it's a must, very good mitigation mode, and very recommended. And cut loose to decrease the temporal blade cooldown by 20%. Let's have a closer look at the weapons now. This also is a flex slot because I do like the Damascus offering. It gives a skill fly fleets. Status power is not as important with us, we don't have so many status effects. However, we have the Claymore Torrent and the Fortress. The Fortress is actually very good, it scales good with Circle of Power, so we can get a lot more resistance and 30% more damage for our skills, because this means 30% more damage for a little bit of pain, for the pain transfer, for the temporal blade. That's why I like it. Although it's not necessary, we have some other alternatives we're going to see later. But for the secondary weapon, yes, it's either the Anomaly shotgun or the guillotine, with Morning Winds and Radiations Plus, very high burst damage when you reload against elites, against bosses, or if you get surrounded and all your skills are on cooldown, which is very rare. And for the sidearm, I don't use it as often, even against elite or bosses. The skill cooldowns are very low, and I do prefer to rock one Claymore Torrent, Anomaly second Claymore Torrent, and then by that time I will have my skills back. But in case you want to have something, I do recommend Shadow Comment and improve vulnerability bullets or Storm Whip. And let's have a look at alternative options for the primary weapon. I like the Roaring Umbra because it has a kinetic stomp, and you don't have to add the Fortress here. You can actually add either the Claymore Torrent or the Shadow Comment. So you can have the Roaring Umbra with those two, or you can have the Funeral Pyre, which is also very good. It actually is better against elites because I don't know if it's a bug, if you hip fire the shotgun and hit multiple enemies, it will proc the mods multiple times. You can just shred them and deal a lot of damage. Instead of Kinetic Storm, you can add a Claymore Torrent because it triggers in longer range. But it's whatever you prefer. Personally, I do like the Fortress. It procs very fast because we have very high RPM. It takes 1 second or 1.5 seconds, and between the rotation I proc it very fast. That's why I recommend it. Now about the flex slots, the pain transfer and the Circle of Power. One of the best alternative options you can have is actually Unstoppable Force. Increases your anomaly power by 50% of resistance piercing. This may not sound very impressed because by default we have 20% resistance piercing. However, I will show you with buffs that we actually have 70% resistance piercing. So this is actually one of the best mods you can replace Pain Transfer or Circle of Power. Another very good alternative option to replace either Circle of Power or Pain Transfer is Geiger's Wave. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because Time Rift will now apply vulnerable to all enemies, and I was actually using this instead of some tier 3 mods when I was using the gear. So you can actually, this is one of the best mods you can use early if you don't have access to all the tier 3 mods and you haven't found the legendary sets. You can use Geiger's Wave, very good, very impressive. And before you unlock all the tier 3 modes, you can also add Time Crack, because this will further decrease the resistance. We don't care so much about the armor, but the resistance by 35% for the enemies. So basically, you will have 35% reduced resistance for the enemies, and on top of that, you will have 70% resistance pierce, so all your skills will hit quite hard. For the talents, it's pretty straightforward. We take everything that has to do with Anomaly power, and we will increase it by a lot. We also take Anomaly Scything. First I thought it was bugged, because, let's see an example. I have 170,000 Anomaly power. If I use a melee attack in the air, doesn't change the Anomaly power. However, you have to hit an enemy for this to proc, so don't worry. It also works if you hit an ally. I see some skills, so if I hit the allies here, you will get a 30% increase Anomaly power, which is 200,000 Anomaly power. So this works, don't worry. I thought it wasn't working, but you have to hit an enemy or an ally to proc, so yes, take this. Everything that decreases the cooldowns and the damage Anomaly power, so we actually have 50% increase Anomaly power when we use the deception skills, 50% Anomaly power when you use the movement skills, 50% Anomaly power when we use the damage skills. That's why this combination will give 150% Anomaly power plus an extra 30%. When we use movement skills, we also get 25% resistance piercing and another 25% resistance piercing when we use a damage skill. For this, actually, I'm getting Shadow's Embrace instead of Shielded Readiness. You don't need 20% extra shield, you will get Silk up very quick. However, sometimes your health drops and you will need that heal, that's why I do prefer the Shadow's Embrace instead of Shielded Readiness. And of course, the Altered Executioner will further increase an Anomaly power by 6% per enemy in close range. So this combination is actually quite insane. And without it being said, how much Anomaly power and resistance pierce we're having, for that we have to use the borrow time. Just to showcase, you will not use borrow time because we cannot proc it here to showcase it. So by default we have 170,000 Anomaly power and 20% resistance piercing. However, when we will use all our buffs, the Temporal Blade, the Hunt the Prey and the melee attack, we will actually have 349,000 Anomaly power and 70% resistance piercing. Why is this good? Because it actually scales with a little bit of pain. Normally, a little bit of pain has 610,000 damage based on the Anomaly power, but fully buffed, it will actually deal 1,257,000 damage. That's why this is good even in early gameplay. You will devastate all the normal enemies without the need of pain transfer. You deal a lot of damage, you have 70% resistance, you actually deal more damage because you will have more Anomaly power, because you don't have the boots. However, you have dreadful single target DPS without the legendary set, but yeah, the Time Rift, thanks to the mods, will hit like a truck. The rotation, although it's not as simple compared to other classes, it's very easy to master. So because we have the Fortress, we need to either proc the Fortress before or after. I do prefer to proc it before. I engage in combat, after that I teleport to the furthest enemy away, because that way you will teleport behind his back and you will be able to use Time Rift to hit many enemies. Teleport, melee attack to get Anomaly power boost, Time Rift to hit as many enemies as you can, and because you usually teleport behind elites, you will use Temporal Blade once or twice to finish them off. If they are elites, switch to your secondary weapon to proc Morning Winds and Radiation Splash, and switch to your primary weapon, shoot them until you proc Fortress again and a couple of Claymore Torrents. Your skills will be back so you can teleport away. If it's an elite and tries to melee you, you don't have to continue fighting them, they will just die a little bit later. Use once again the Time Rift to hit as many enemies as you can, and Temporal Blade to finish off either close by enemies or elites. And that's basically it. Now some tips when using the class. You can actually set the teleport to an enemy you want, because usually if you don't aim correctly, using the dot, let's say, you won't teleport to the enemy you want, so some of the enemies will remain behind and you won't hit them with the Time Rift. However, if you hold down the button, you will see which enemy you can teleport behind. He will highlight blue, so you will have the time to just teleport behind and do the rotation and just do the dance. The rotation is a dance. You just go behind, slow them down, kill them. Temporal Blade actually is very good because it paralyzes enemies immune to interrupt. That's why Temporal Blade is one of the best skills we can use. Even Brute Mothers, bosses and everything, they will be paralyzed for a couple of seconds. even if they're immune to interrupt. But don't forget, Temporal Blade is also a mitigation tool. You have to hit 2, 3 or 4 targets if you can, or 3 targets are good if you hit them twice, get that armor boost we need, and survive much easier. And finally, let's move to the advantages and disadvantages of the build. It's actually pretty fast because we can teleport, we have excellent AoE capabilities with Time Rift. Even without pain transfer, a little bit of pain will deal massive amount of damage to many enemies if you just teleport correctly in the right angle and hit them. And it can kill everything apart from alphas and elites. Alphas may need 1 or more temporal blades or the pain transfer to die. That's why you usually leave the pain transfer if you want to one-shot the alphas with that. Otherwise, you won't get as much benefit as you want. The survivability is insane, even without Circle of Power, which is good, as I told you, against Altered and bosses. We have a lot of mitigation. We will go armor capped, we have extra 5% mitigation as the Trickster by default when we have Shield. We will actually, most of our healing, quote unquote, won't be skill life leads or the class. We actually have the shield to protect us, that's why we kill most of the enemies in close range and we proc the shield, and we won't take as much damage as you think. However, this build has one and only major flaw. It doesn't have very good single target DPS against bosses with high health, such as Moloch for example. You cannot kill him very fast, that's why we invest a little bit in survivability when we fight him, especially the Circle of Power. And the reason for that is the nature of the mods. Both pain transfer and a little bit of pain won't affect the bosses when they get immune to interrupt. So you basically can only damage him using the Temporal Blade and your mods. After a while, you do a huge burst using the pain transfer, using a little bit of pain, and after that they will be immune for several seconds, 10 to 20 seconds or 30, I think, something like that. And during that time you will only do damage with Temporal Blade and the mods. That's why it takes longer to kill them, and especially the new spider monster is a pain. It has a lot of hit points even when hitting by behind with skills. Pain transfer and a little bit of pain doesn't do any damage to it, so Temporal Blade and your mods will be the only source of TPS. Then you may need your sidearm to further increase your single target DPS a little bit. However, you will be able to survive quite easy thanks to our survivability and the mods, and as long as smaller mobs spawn nearby, you will also get shield every time and then, but we also have the skill life leads to heal ourselves in case we don't have any shield. So basically you can just avoid these expeditions, although Moloch is not as bad. It may die a little lower, but overall the timers on frontline will be good, 7.5, 8 minutes, depending on how well you know the level, or if you just want to take your time to not kill the mob. You don't have to do timers now, I'm just giving you an average time because some people just want to farm expeditions very fast. And the spider monster, you can destroy it, but it will take twice or 3 times the time compared to other classes and specs. Some classes can destroy it in 10, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I don't know, or the average around a minute, but with this spec we will need a couple of minutes at least. And that was it for today's video. I really hope this will help you to build your own Anomaly powered Trickster build. For me, it's one of my favorite builds and all the classes. It's very fast paced, instant cast. I have a lot of fun when running it, expeditions. Never a dull moment to just know when to teleport, throw enemies in the air and destroy them with a Temporal Blade. And I do enjoy that the Temporal Blade can paralyze enemies immune to interrupt. This is my favorite part. That's why everyone and everything is slower than you. So feel free to like if you liked. And you can subscribe for more upcoming videos for Outriders and other video games. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.
Drop this falling gently down on the turn.